There have been countless adaptations of Herbert George Wells. He didn't just help invent science fiction, he helped shape how we still imagine it today. Time machines, invisible men, alien invasions, genetic experiments, all of it starts with him. Let's revisit some of the best screen adaptations of his work. This list includes just 7, but the comments are always open for your picks. This wasn't the first H.G. Wells adaptation to hit the screen, but it's a fitting place to start. When Universal took on The Invisible Man, they promised a version that would respect the source material, and director James Whale delivered, with a mix of dark science fiction and wicked humor. Claude Rains, in his screen debut, plays Griffin with nothing but his voice, yet manages to dominate the film with eerie charm and manic energy. Wells' political themes were mostly stripped away, but the film makes up for it with striking effects, unpredictable tone, and a lead performance that somehow makes a disembodied voice unforgettable. The story was reimagined again in 2020, this time as a psychological horror about control and abuse. The core idea stayed the same. A man becomes invisible and loses himself completely. Written directly for the screen by H.G. Wells, Things to Come is both a warning and a vision, a grim forecast of war, followed by a bold dream of progress. The story spans a full century, beginning with the outbreak of global conflict and ending in a world rebuilt by science and reason. The production was massive, the themes ambitious: war, disease, dictatorship, and eventually, hope. Wells imagined a future shaped not by destruction, but by the human will to rebuild. Critics often compare it to Metropolis, though Wells famously hated that film. Ironically, Things to Come never reached the same cultural status. Still, as an early blueprint for serious science fiction on screen, Things to Come remains essential. Even now, nearly a century later, it feels unsettlingly relevant. H.G. Wells is best known for science fiction, but the history of Mr. Polly shows a different side. A gentle, funny story about a man stuck in a life he can't stand. Alfred Polly hates his job, his town, his wife, and mostly himself. When bankruptcy looms, he sets fire to his shop in a half-hearted suicide attempt. It fails, of course. So he walks away from it all, not to escape the world, but to finally explore it. Wells called this his happiest book, and the film captures that tone. It's a small story, full of small details, but the result is surprisingly timeless. No science fiction, just one man's quiet search for peace. Charming, thoughtful, and endlessly watchable, The Time Machine turns H.G. Wells's debut novella into a post-war adventure about humanity's future and its flaws. Rod Taylor plays George, a time traveler with Wells's own initials, whose optimism is tested as he witnesses centuries of war, collapse, and evolution. By the year 802,701, humankind has split in two: the passive Eloi and the monstrous Morlocks. The film updates Wells' class-based allegory, replacing it with a Cold War backstory of endless conflict between East and West. It trades some of the novel's satire for clarity, and it works. Not a carbon copy of the novella, but full of wonder, tension, and big ideas. A remake followed in 2002, with Guy Pearce as a grieving scientist drawn into the far future. Visually impressive and emotionally direct, it takes a looser approach to the story, with mixed results. This adaptation of Wells' 1901 novel mixes space adventure with light comedy, brought to life through Ray Harryhausen's signature stop-motion effects. Lionel Jeffries plays Cavor, an eccentric scientist who invents anti-gravity paint and launches himself to the moon. There, deep below the surface, he and his companions encounter the insect-like selenites. The film leans into whimsy more than most Wells adaptations. Bright Technicolor sets, charming creature designs, and a playful tone make it feel closer to fantasy than science fiction. But the story moves slowly, and the selenites don't feel especially dangerous. Still, the film has some of the book's quirky charm and works well as light entertainment. Based on one of Wells' most disturbing novels, this 1977 version offers a restrained but thoughtful take on the dangers of scientific hubris. Burt Lancaster plays Dr. Moreau, a calm, almost clinical figure who creates human-animal hybrids on his remote island. Michael York stars as the castaway who slowly uncovers the truth behind Moreau's experiments. The film builds tension gradually, keeping the horror quiet but persistent. The makeup effects are strong, the tone serious, and the setting feels convincingly isolated and strange. It may not be the most stylish adaptation, but it's one of the more faithful, especially when compared to the infamous 1996 version, where troubled production and bizarre choices nearly turned the story into parody. Steven Spielberg's version of War of the Worlds stays surprisingly close to the novel in one key way. It focuses on one person's point of view. Instead of politicians or scientists, we follow Tom Cruise as Ray Ferrier, a dock worker trying to keep his kids safe as alien tripods wipe out everything around them. The story stays grounded, showing the invasion through panic, confusion, and fear. Visually, the film is strong. The tripods look and move like something out of Wells' pages, smooth, towering, and strange. Scenes like the first emergence, the burning train, or bodies floating down a river leave a lasting impression. John Williams' music is quiet and unsettling. Spielberg adds his usual focus on a broken family and shifts the story's themes toward post-9/11 fears, sudden violence, collapse, and survival. Not all of it lands, but the result is tense, bleak, and more faithful to Wells's tone than it might seem.